You have probably seen him before without even realizing it. He is not the loudest person in the room. He does not dominate conversations. He does not posture or perform. In fact, you might have walked right past him, dismissing him as unremarkable until something stopped you cold. Maybe it was the way he held your gaze a moment too long, not with aggression, but with a stillness that felt unnerving. Maybe it was the silence he carried, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of a man who has nothing left to prove and nothing left to fear. That man was not born that way. He was made in the fire. And what came out the other side is something most people are completely unprepared for. The most dangerous man you will ever meet is not who you think. He is not the strongest, not the most aggressive, and certainly not the richest. He is the one you almost did not notice, the quiet one in the corner, the one who has not said a word and somehow owns the entire room. His power does not come from muscles or money or status. It comes from something far more terrifying to those who have not earned it. It comes from having been completely and utterly destroyed by life and choosing to rebuild himself alone. Nobody held his hand. There was no support group, no savior, no one coming to rescue him. Just him and his pain and the brutal decision to either stay broken or become something that could only be built by a man who survived it. I know what you are thinking. Dangerous. That sounds like something violent, something destructive, something to be afraid of. But it is not that. I am not talking about violence at all. I am talking about something far more powerful than that. I am talking about a man who has walked through the kind of pain that would have shattered most people and emerged on the other side with something that cannot be taken from him. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood this centuries ago when he wrote that difficulties are what show men's character. He compared hardship to a wrestling match, where God, like a trainer, matches you with a rough opponent so you can prove your strength. Most men run from that kind of pain. They numb it with alcohol, distractions, or empty relationships. They do everything they can to avoid sitting with the weight of their own suffering. But the dangerous man, the one you should be paying attention to, walked straight through it. And that decision, that one terrifying decision, changed everything. Let me tell you about a man I know. Let us call him Jay. 46 years old, had everything society told him would make him happy. The house, the career, the woman he loved, the kids he would die for. He built his entire identity around those things. And then, in the span of a few years, it all collapsed. She filed for divorce and started dating somebody else before the papers were even finalized. Just pause for a second and think about what that actually does to a man. It is not just a breakup. It is a complete demolition of everything he thought his life was. The attorneys, the court dates, the custody hearings, the bills that never stop accumulating. Fighting to see his own children while somebody else is sleeping in his bed, living the life that he built. She asked for full custody, which meant this man who worked double shifts to provide for those kids, who coached their little league games, who read them bedtime stories every night, was now scheduled for weekend visits. If the court agreed. And while he was fighting that battle, he was lying awake at 3 a.m. thinking about another man raising his children, another man sitting at his kitchen table, another man becoming the presence his kids would grow up remembering. That thought, that specific thought, is one of the most psychologically devastating experiences a man can ever have. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote that a life without struggle leaves a person weak and untested. He argued that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But for Jay, the reality was worse than anything he could have imagined. When a man goes through this level of sustained psychological trauma, what happens to his body? It starts to break down. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods his system continuously. His testosterone tanks dramatically. His motivation disappears. His confidence collapses. His sex drive, the biological signal of vitality in a man, goes silent. His sleep becomes fragmented because his brain literally cannot rest when it perceives continuous threat. His immune system weakens. His heart works harder than it needs to. His memory and concentration deteriorate. And then he has to walk into work every single morning acting like everything is just peachy. Jay was a salesman, commission-based, which meant if he did not perform, he did not eat. But his mind was fractured. He was sitting across from clients trying to close deals while internally replaying his last court hearing. His numbers were dropping. His commissions were shrinking. His manager pulled him aside and said, "We need to talk. You need to hit your targets." Nobody asked why they dropped. Nobody asked what was happening at home. Nobody cared, because the machine does not stop for broken men. His co-workers knew what he was going through, but they kept their distance. That is what people do, because they have lives of their own. Because most people do not know what to do with a man who is visibly drowning, so they pretend they do not see it. His friends stopped calling. Not all at once, gradually. The way people disappear when they realize you need something real from them and they do not have it to give. He spent Father's Day alone. Just let that land for a second. Father's Day alone. Eating takeout in a rented room that he had to move into to cover the attorney fees while his children were somewhere else celebrating with someone else. He spent Christmas alone, his birthday alone. He tried to go out 1 or 2 nights just to breathe, just to be somewhere that was not that room. And he sat in a restaurant and saw families at tables around him, kids laughing, fathers cutting food for their children, mothers leaning into their husbands, and he just had to leave. He could not handle it anymore because the grief of what he no longer had was physically unbearable in that moment. He went from a house to a room, a single rented room paid for with money from a part-time job he took on weekends, on top of his full-time work, just to keep up with the attorney fees. This man was not lazy. He was not weak. He was just a man being crushed from every direction simultaneously, with nobody caring and nobody coming. He developed anxiety so severe that simple tasks felt impossible. Depression that made getting out of bed feel like climbing a mountain. Nightmares that woke him up at 3 in the morning replaying his biggest fears. PTSD, clinical, diagnosed, real, from the trauma of losing not just a marriage, but his children, his home, his identity, his sense of self, all at once. This is what real destruction looks like. The kind that happens to men every single day while the world just keeps moving and nobody stops to notice. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who faced wars, plagues, and betrayal as Roman emperor, wrote that the impediment to action advances action, and that what stands in the way becomes the way. He also wrote that we have power over our minds, not outside events. But knowing that and living it are two very different things. Jay was about to learn the difference. This is where the story changes, because at the absolute bottom of all of that, Jay made a decision that would change the entire trajectory of his life. He knew alcohol would make it worse. He had seen what it did to men around him, how it promised relief and delivered only deeper destruction. He tried dating, because loneliness at that level makes you desperate for any type of closeness and warmth. But he was too broken to trust anybody, too wounded to open up. Every woman he met, he looked at through the lens of everything he had lost. He was a wounded wolf, and wounded wolves do not trust the hand that reaches toward them, because the last hand that reached toward him destroyed him. Dating left him emptier than ever, more convinced than ever that he was fundamentally unlovable, that something was wrong with him at his core. And that belief is the most dangerous belief a broken man can carry, because it becomes self-fulfilling. He sat with all of it, the loneliness, the grief, the biological collapse, the financial pressure, the professional failure, the social isolation, the painful agony of missing his children. He sat with all of it and asked himself one question. If this is the lowest I will ever be, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to let this destroy me, or am I going to use it? Then he realized that nobody was coming, and that was okay, because he was still here. And as long as he was still here, there was still hope. The philosopher Epictetus wrote that the greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it, and that skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. Jay was about to become the pilot of his own storm. What he built from the pieces left of that life is what I want to talk about now, because this is the part that most people never see. It happens in total privacy, in the dark, in silence, where literally nobody is watching. He started with his body, because his body was the only thing he had complete control over. Every morning, before the thoughts could swallow him, before the sadness could pin him down to his bed, he got up. He looked at himself in the mirror and said, "I am a beast. Nothing can break me." Then he got in his car and went to the gym. Not because he felt like it. He never felt like it. But he made a decision that feeling like it was no longer a requirement. He understood something fundamental. A man who cannot command his own body cannot command anything. So he commanded it every day, whether he slept or not, whether he cried in the car on the way there or not, whether every cell in him was screaming to stop or not. He went anyway. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote that difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Jay was learning that lesson in the most brutal way possible, and the body responded. Slowly. Not dramatically, but consistently. And consistency is the language the body actually understands. He started reading. Not self-help books full of corny affirmations. Psychology, philosophy, biology, history. He wanted to understand why this happened to him. Not to assign blame, but to understand the mechanics behind everything. The attachment patterns, the trauma responses, the neurological loops that were keeping him in pain. Because you cannot escape a trap that you do not fully understand. He faced his childhood wounds, the ones he had been carrying his whole life, the patterns he brought into the marriage that contributed to its collapse. He was not torturing himself with guilt. He was trying to understand himself, because a man who understands himself cannot be surprised by himself. He rebuilt his finances very slowly. The part-time job became a side business. The side business grew, not because he got lucky, but because a man with nothing to lose and everything to prove to himself works with an intensity that only comes from having nothing left to lose and everything left to prove to himself. Key word there, to himself. Through every early morning, every sleepless night, every court date, every missed birthday with his children, he kept one promise to himself. He would not let what happened to him define what he became. He would use every scar, every loss, every broken piece of himself to rebuild something that the comfortable version of him never could have created. The philosopher Epictetus wrote that the soul is dyed with the color of its thoughts. Jay was dyeing his soul with thoughts of resilience, discipline, and self-mastery. And here is what emerged out of all of that. Here is the man that the fire produced. Here is why he is the most dangerous man in the world. He cannot ever be controlled through fear, because he has already survived his worst fear. He cannot be manipulated through threat of loss, because he has already lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. He cannot be diminished by people who have not paid the price that he paid, because he knows exactly what it cost him and exactly what it produced. He moves differently now. He is not arrogant. He is certain. There is a quality to his presence now that people feel before he says a word. A stillness, a groundedness, the specific energy of a man who has nothing to prove because he has already proven it to the only person who matters, himself. He does not go after people. Not because he turned cold, but because he understands that what is meant for him will come to him. He does not fear the silence. He spent his darkest nights in complete silence and made peace with what he found there. He learned that silence is not emptiness. It is where a man can finally meet himself. And the man he met was worth knowing. He does not react. He responds. When pressure comes, and pressure always comes, he becomes still. And from that stillness, he chooses with precision. It is not that he does not feel the pressure. It is because he has felt worse before and survived it alone. Women feel this energy. They cannot explain it, but they feel it. They feel safe in a way that they have never felt safe before. Not because he is a gentle giant now. No, he is certain. And certainty in a world full of uncertain men is the most magnetic force on earth. His children will one day understand what their father went through to remain standing. And what they will see is not a victim, and definitely not a broken man, but a man who was tested beyond belief at the absolute limit of what a human being can endure and chose every single day to keep going. That is the lesson they will carry for the rest of their lives. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote that everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. If it is unendurable, then stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end as well. Jay learned to endure what was endurable and let go of what was not. He stopped complaining about what he had lost and started building what he could still create. I need you to hear this next part. Not from a coach, Not from a content creator, but from someone who has watched strong men suffer in silence and decided that someone finally needs to say something about it. There are men watching this right now who are somewhere in Jay's story. Somewhere. Maybe at the beginning of it. Maybe in the middle. Maybe on the other side of it, still carrying the weight of what it cost them. And I need you to hear something that nobody is saying to you. What you went through was not a reflection of your worth. It was a test of your will. And the fact that you are still here, still breathing, still trying, even on the days when trying feels impossible, it is not nothing. It is everything. The world does not celebrate this. The world does not see the man who gets up alone, who goes to his court date alone, who spends Father's Day in a rented room and still shows up to work on Monday. The world does not see that, but I do. And I need you to know that what you are doing in the dark, in that silence, in the moments when nobody is witnessing you, is one of the most extraordinary things a human being can do. You are not failing. You are forging. And what comes out on the other side is not who you were before. It is someone that the before version of you could never have become. The most dangerous man in the world was once the most broken man in the world. Listen to that again. The most dangerous man in the world was once the most broken man in the world. He is dangerous because he cannot be controlled through fear. He has already survived his worst fear. He cannot be manipulated through approval. He stopped needing it the night everything fell apart. He cannot be diminished by people who have never paid the price that he paid. He is dangerous because he knows exactly who he is, built from the inside out by his own hand in the dark, alone, and nothing and no one can ever take that from him again. The philosopher Seneca wrote that fire is the test of gold, adversity, of strong men. Jay was tested by fire, and he emerged as gold. If that is you, if you are Jay, if you are somewhere in that story right now, I need you to hear this directly. Keep going. Keep fighting. It is not going to be easy. Nothing in life worth having comes easy. It does not always get easier, but keep going because of what waits for you on the other side. A version of yourself that you cannot even imagine yet. A clarity that cannot be bought or borrowed or given to you. A strength that was built in the exact darkness that you are standing in right now. Your children will know this man. The one who did not quit. The one who went through the fire and came back, not bitter, not broken, but forged. That is the man they will be proud of. That is the man they will tell stories about. That is the father who showed them, without a single word, what it means to be human and what it means to be a human being worth respecting. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wrote that no great thing is created suddenly, and the kind of strength that Jay built is no exception. It was built through the accumulation of small choices, each one building on the last. Each time he chose to get up when he wanted to stay down, he built that strength. Each time he chose to go to the gym when he wanted to give up, he built that strength. Each time he chose to read instead of drink, to work instead of wallow, to keep going instead of stop, he built that strength. And as he built it, it became part of who he is. It became part of his presence. And that presence is what makes him dangerous in the best possible way. The world does not need more comfortable men. It needs more dangerous ones. The ones who healed alone. The ones who cannot be broken twice. The ones who know with absolute certainty exactly who they are. If that is you, I am damn proud of you. What you are carrying is not light, and you are carrying it anyway. Keep going. Keep fighting. Keep building. The fire is not there to destroy you. It is there to refine you. And what comes out on the other side is something the world desperately needs. A man who cannot be controlled. A man who cannot be manipulated. A man who has nothing to prove and everything to offer. That is the most dangerous man you will ever meet. And if you are becoming him, then you are becoming exactly who you were meant to be. Stay dangerous. I will see you in the next one.